You are now tuned in to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, where your hosts, Annette Harris, analyze intriguing life questions and concerns, such as, do Christians suffer from mental illness? Have you wondered why they act abnormal? Or you may ask, what is really going on in their minds? Do you need Annette? Well, keep listening for a biblical understanding of the psychology of the mind.
Hey there, good afternoon, and welcome to another session of Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. And I am your host, Annette Harris. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for listening and watching. Of course, before we go further, I must acknowledge the Lord in prayer. Lord, I thank you for this wonderful day that you've blessed us to see. I thank you for all that you have done and what you are willing to do in us and through us. And again, we pray that you would get the glory out of this session and what we have on today. In the name of Jesus, we pray. And our opening scripture that I normally like to quote is the first part of Hosea 4:6. And it simply states, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee." And again, we're grateful to be here at Intellectual Radio. And there are actually three various ways that you can listen and or watch us on today. Of course, the station's website, IntellectualRadio.com. You can go there and you can listen to us. We're also on YouTube live at the present time. And when you go to YouTube, you can type in Intellectual Radio and then locate Mind, Body, and Soul. You will see us there as well. And then I also have a live feed that is we're interacting with on the Mind, Body, and Soul page. And I know we normally interact on the Annette known as Annette, but we're doing it from the radio show page. And so if you would be so kind as to go there, please like and share when you get to that live feed. We would really appreciate it. Now, I am excited on this afternoon because I am joined not in the studio actually, but via telephone and then also Facebook Live. I have a wonderful guest that I'm going to feature on this afternoon, a guest that was referred to me. And I tell you, I had the pleasure of speaking with him directly. And then I have also looked up the information that we are going to discuss on today. He's the author and wonderful man of God. And I want to feature him on today. His name is Stephen Music, like music, but it's a K at the end. Stephen Music is here with us on today, and he is the author of Life After Heaven. Did I get that correct?
Yes, you did.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Life After Heaven. And I know some people may say, what kind of a book is that with that title? It is let's see, it's very catching. It is a conversation starter because typically people will say, I've heard of life after death. Or, what is this life after heaven? Well, we're going to go into talking about as much as Stephen today, what this book means. Now, what I want to do before I actually go into the session itself, I want to tell you a little bit about Steve. And I have just a short little bio that I'm going to read on him. A shout out to his assistant, Jackie Reister. She's and the others that were working with her, giving me the information that I need for today. And then also, of course, to my own assistant, Demetria Brand Triplett. Stephen Music is the founder of the investment management firm, Destiny Capital. Since 1977, Stephen has been in the profession of managing family wealth and has nurtured Destiny Capital from a one-man operation to the comprehensive firm it is today. Additionally, Music has 3 master's degrees. Wow. That's deep. 2 from the American College Management and Financial Services, and one from the University of Denver's Joseph Corbel School of International Studies and Global Studies. Ooh, that was a mouthful. That but it's a blessing, I tell you. And as I was reading through, I didn't finish the entire book, but as I was reading through the book, he was actually kind of known as a brainiac coming along. So I can see where we get the 3 master's degrees from. How are you on this afternoon, Mr. Music?
I'm doing really, really well. Thank you very much for having me. It's a delight to be part of your show.
Oh, well, great. I am so glad that you have decided to join us, consented to come on today to talk to us about this very, very interesting masterpiece that you have here, this book. You know, before I ask you anything else, is this your first book?
It's really my first literary work, yes.
Okay. All right, that's fine. You know, the type of person that I am, let's take music for example. When it comes to music, I'm a lyrics girl. I have to, what will grab me are the words of the song, and then will come the music or the melody. Okay. When I'm reading books, the thing that will grab me and or keep me interested will be the intro. Sometimes the forward. And if it's interesting enough to me, then I'll continue on. And I will say this much. As I stated, I didn't finish the entire book. I did just get the book on yesterday, but the intro, the forward, all of it grabbed me. And it left me wanting for more and to read. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a good read for me, because I'm telling you, it has to take something to really, really grab my attention. And I'm not just saying that because you're here on my show today. I'm saying it because it's the truth. So I appreciate you even penning this and writing this work. So let's go into talking about this book. You know, when I was presented with this, and I'm saying, oh my goodness, when you read the caption, okay, Life After Heaven is the title of the book. The caption underneath, how my time in heaven can transform your life on earth. And I took that as the experience that you received, that you wanted to basically pay it forward, give back to somebody else, trying to help someone else. That's what I took away from the title itself and from the caption that was underneath. So let's start maybe from the beginning. You know, I know that we have a few questions that we do want to ask you, but let's start from the beginning. How did this book come about? I know that it was after talking with you that it wasn't something that you did right away. I believe that there was years from what you experienced to you actually writing and it being published. So let's start from the beginning.
The event that surrounds the book goes all the way back to 1976. The United States government decided to test the swine flu vaccine on military personnel in Great Lakes, and frankly, they also did the soldiers at Fort Sheridan. And you know, as military personnel, they lined us up and they gave us the swine flu. They tested us. So I particularly was allergic to the swine flu vaccine. And then I wound up in the emergency department of the Great Lakes Regional Hospital, and I was on an IV, and they injected the antidote to the swine flu vaccine directly into my bloodstream, and I was allergic to the antidote as well. And so after the nurse pushed the plunger on the syringe into my IV tube, I don't remember anything for 5 weeks. the thing I do remember is that I went to heaven. And I had a glorious, wonderful experience of having a conversation like I'm talking to you and your audience with the risen Christ. And the most painful words I've ever heard in my life from that day to this were the words of Jesus with his arm over my shoulder in heaven, where he said, "And you can't stay." And when he said that, I woke up in intensive care isolation at Great Lakes, and the Navy nurse at the foot of the bed said, "Welcome back. We thought we lost you back there." And I'm thinking, where was back there and where am I now? And I woke up in a fractured body, a disabled person. They ultimately discharged me as a disabled veteran. And that was the beginning, at age 20, of my walk in the here and now, experiencing the kingdom of heaven in the here and now. So my story isn't, oh, geez, I went to heaven and survived, came back. The real story is that I continue to have experiences, and have for the last 42 years. I call them bubbles of the kingdom of heaven in the here and now, because they're experiences that feel very much like the hereafter. And so I've been living this all my life, never thinking that I'd actually write a book or do an interview like the one we're doing today. But by and by, and circumstances developed, and I was encouraged to tell my story. And the essence of my story is that the kingdom of heaven is closer than we think. And everyone can experience it repeatedly and should. It's a simple statement.
Okay. You know, you mentioned, and I did see something also about bubbles of heaven. I may be getting ahead of myself when I'm asking this, because you mentioned that you're still experiencing things, and I'm assuming that you mean from when you were in heaven. So you're still experiencing some of those things that you saw in heaven. And this sounds so weird, the conversation, but it's just like it's intriguing. You know, it grabs you though. So I know it sounds kind of weird. I'm like, okay, so when you were in heaven, so it was that some of the things that you are still experiencing when you call it bubbles of heaven? What exactly are bubbles of heaven?
You know, that's a really good question, and it's a perfect time for it. A bubble of the kingdom of heaven is a zone, it's a space where the normal norms, the normal rules of the here and now are suspended, and the kingdom of heaven rules and reigns. And so over all of my years of working with people and living in the here and now, I've come to a place where I recognize the circumstances that arise and that give rise to a bubble of the kingdom of heaven. And so I'm now in a place where I teach and train and encourage other people that the kingdom of heaven is closer than you think. And you too can have an experience like the ones I have routinely. That it's a learned thing. You don't have to have a near-death experience like I did in order to have this.
Okay.
And the biblical basis for this is Jesus himself when he said, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." And that's not a parable. That's just a true statement.
That's deep. You know, Steve, it's almost like I kind of want to spend a month maybe where you are just talking to you about what you've dealt with and what you experienced because, again, along with it being intriguing, I was even looking, back at the beginning of your book, and I'm very grateful that you started from your childhood telling us about Stephen and what you dealt with, even as a child, and even talking about your family life. I was looking because it's my understanding you were the youngest, correct?
I am.
Okay. And some of the things, of course, I was definitely relating to you because I'm the youngest. And I wrote I wrote some little notes inside the book, and I'm like, oh my God, this is me too. Because there were some of the things that you were talking about in terms of kind of, and I'm paraphrasing, kind of finding yourself, or basically you would rather just be in the background. Well, that's what you had to adjust to, because your brother was the athletic one or whatever. You said something when he walks into a room, he would command the attention of everybody, but it was not necessarily like that with you. With being the youngest, if you walked in the room, they probably wouldn't even necessarily know that you were there, so to speak. And so you learn to deal with that, and then you learn to, kind of be by yourself. And that's how I am too. And there was something that you said, and I don't have it in front of me, about almost like you really wanted to make your way. You really wanted to kind of make a statement. And about Stephen the person, and it came out even when you first went away to boot camp, when you were making yourself known with what you could do, and even when you tried out for the SEALs, just all that. And I'm like, wow, he was really there were some things that he was trying to, and I don't necessarily want to say make up for or show them that I can do this. I guess it was kind of a sense like that. And I was just relating to it because that's how I am sometimes too. That's how I am too, as well. But again, and going back to the beginning of the book, I was grateful that you brought that out, because that does pave the way to understanding where you eventually, what you eventually experienced and what you went through. All of that goes hand in hand. I was doing a lot of analyzing. Anyone who knows Annette, I analyze. Sometimes I overanalyze or analyze too much. But I was looking at that, and I said, okay, as the youngest, he basically had to make his way, so that they would know there is a Stephen, and there's a Stephen music, and that not to even take you for granted or your presence for granted or what you could do. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I was going to say something else, but go ahead.
Well, the context of my military experiment, my military experience was that I grew up in a household that was violent and vacant for me. I had virtually no identity. I had no idea who I was. I was very much a brainiac and a social dwarf. And I got a letter from the United States government when I was 19 years old that said the draft lottery is enacted and your number is 16. And that meant that I was getting drafted. So I decided to join the United States Navy, because at least then I felt like I had some control over my destiny,
Yeah.
But early on in the first week of boot camp in the Navy, I really understood that I have a choice to make. And it was the first time in my life that I could actually consciously be somebody. And I thrived in the military. I just loved it.
That's wonderful. You know what I think I want to do here is to go ahead, because I see questions on my Facebook Live feed. But what we'll do,
Perfect.
we'll go ahead and take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll address these questions, and then allow you to continue on. And of course, throughout the session, I want to follow your lead, Stephen, because I know when you write a book, of course, you want people to purchase your book. So you may or may not want to give out too much information on the show. So I don't.
No.
Okay. So I'm going to follow your lead on that.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Okay. So we will take this first break, and we will come back for more of Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette right here on Intellectual Radio.
And now you can live in love again. And what will you say when all the tears turn into joy and all your doubts become immense? And everybody say, I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
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 Oh Lord, I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad.
And what will you say when the lame begins to walk, all because you chose to lay your hand? And what will you say, yeah, when the blind begins to see and the deaf begins to hear again? Come on, y'all. And what will you say, my God, will, when your home was gonna close because they just would not extend? But then the Lord, He moved the heart of man, and now your home belongs to you again. But everybody say, I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
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 I'm so glad.
Everybody say, I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I said, I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad you came to
Everybody say, I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad.
Oh, we say, I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
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 Oh Lord, I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so glad you came to rescue me.
I'm so
Oh,
glad
you came to rescue me. Yeah.
you came to set me free.
To deliver me.
To deliver me.
I know that you did. I know you did. No, you did. You came to set me free. You came to deliver me. Oh Lord, you came to set me free. You came to deliver me. You did it all for me. What you did, yes you did. You came to set me free. Oh God, you came to deliver me and save me. Yes you did, to deliver me. Oh Lord, to deliver me. I know that you did it all. I know that you love me. I know that you care for me. Yeah. I know that you love me. I know that you care for me. Yeah. I know that you love me. I know that you care for me. Oh Lord, you did it all for me.
All right, all right. Welcome back. Welcome back to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. And I am your host, Annette Harris. Thank you so much for returning with us on this afternoon. We are talking with the wonderful author, Stephen Music of Life After Heaven. And I tell you, we have had a wonderful conversation thus far, and we're going to continue on. What I wanted to do is, and let's see here, on Facebook Live, I had a few questions for Stephen that my listeners wanted to know. Everyone is excited. They're on here. They're asking questions. Let's see here. Brandy McCord. She says, when he has his earthly heaven experiences, the ones that you're continuing to have now,
Yep.
are you still fully present here? Oh, that's a very interesting question. Are you still fully present here?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And
Yep.
then she also asked, how do you appear to others at the time when you're having these experiences?
Being in the here and now means that I'm still sequestered in this sack of skin. I'm a fully functioning human, but I have a soul and I have a spirit. And it's the blend of my soul and my spirit in the here and now that puts me in a place where I recognize the kingdom of heaven in the here and now. And they operate together. The kingdom of this world and the kingdom of heaven, they operate sort of in parallel universes, if you can think about it like that. And that occasionally heaven interrupts earth and interrupts us. And that we have the opportunity to be ambassadors of a very powerful kingdom, which is the one that God operates. And so in my lifetime, I know that the kingdom of heaven can be experienced along 6 facets. And over my lifetime, I've learned to know what the early warning signals are when the environment is pregnant with the Father. And I've been trained and I'm encouraged to step into those circumstances. And when I do, the people that are involved in the bubbles of the kingdom of heaven are forever changed. They're different people.
Okay. Oh, wow. You've just sparked up something in my mind. So, okay, a couple of questions for you then. So when you're having these experiences, is there something, and I think you kind of mentioned that, is there something that triggers it, or is it just, something that just happens when you say the spirit is pregnant, or is it random, or does something trigger it?
It's one of those, I'm in a place where I never expect the kingdom of heaven to erupt around me or to be in my space, but I always anticipate. Expectancy means that I have God on a leash and I carry him around with me everywhere I go. And that's a bad idea because it contains the Father in a way that he doesn't want to be contained at all. Anticipating means that I'm a volunteer. I'm available for whenever the Father God decides to intervene in the lives of people. And so I'm in a place where I'm ready, willing, and able. Think of it, I think of it as a volunteer. I'm an ambassador of the kingdom of heaven. And so I go about my daily life, but I'm always cognizant of being available for the Father. They say in Scripture that I only do what I see the Father doing. And so part of a facet of the kingdom of heaven here is it's a spiritual thing. It can be a practical thing. I find and discover the kingdom of heaven in the world of work. I find the kingdom of heaven in our emotions. I also find it in vision. You actually see it. And then also, I find the kingdom of heaven in time. Time, there is no such thing in heaven. There is no construct at all of time. time only resides down here, and we live at a pace of time here that totally disrupts our lives. And so I operate on a kingdom timeline, not on the one here.
Okay.
And it allows me to be patient and not get so crazy busy.
Wow.
So some of it is seeing and being available, being aware.
Wow. So and this is the whole purpose of your book, to try to teach us this, to try and instruct us about the kingdom of heaven.
The first 60% of the book is really my story. But the last 40% of the book is all about teaching people how to experience the kingdom of heaven in their own lives. I had a conversation this morning with a business executive that read my book, and he said, your story is just crazy. And he said, but the longer that I read and the longer that I spent with it, the more sane it became. And my response to him was, he just had an encounter with the King of Kings. Because he can only get to that conclusion in relationship between he and Christ, between he and the Father. See, that's Father revelation. That's nothing that you can get from me. And the sanity that he's looking for rocked his world. It rocked his life. He's going, you really messed me up. And I thought, well, that's a good thing.
And I'm laughing because that was how I felt too. It was like, okay, and just like what I said a few minutes ago, I'm like, it's kind of crazy, but it like, when you continue on, it's like, wow, this makes sense, and it's like it's relatable and you can understand it, and it grows on you, and it makes you want to read more.
Well, I'm honored by that. I'm really honored by that.
Well, praise God. So let me see, Brandy, hopefully that your first question was answered, because she has others here as well. Let's see. Brandy also says, how long are the experiences? Oh, I think we maybe addressed that. And doesn't it make life on earth seem unbearable? That, you know what?
Ooh.
I'm going to let you answer that, but it is interesting that she should ask that question, because there was something else that you said in the book, because you mentioned the reason why you didn't talk about this for a long time. But I'm going to let you answer that question.
I'll answer the last question first. The contrast between the kingdom of heaven and this world is stark. And it is absolutely true that this life is we live in the land of bland, and we don't even know it. We just don't get that peace. And so living here compared to heaven is it's a dramatic contrast. But the bubbles of the kingdom of heaven are very sovereign events. Very rarely do they last more than 5-6 minutes. And inside the bubbles of the kingdom of heaven, life is totally different. It's being like it's like being back inside pure joy. They're not heaven to the full, but they're an echo of where I was. And as that began to happen to me in my 20s and in my 30s, I began to take note of, oh my gosh, this is really important. Pay attention. And so, as I said earlier, I never thought I would write a book. I never thought I would actually teach this. Elaine and I simply lived it, because that's what we were thinking. That's what we were about. Only until 2011, did I get a real strong encouragement to go ahead and tell my story and write a book. And expand the idea that the kingdom of heaven is actually closer than we think.
Right.
So one of the things that's really interesting in the development here is since I wrote the book and since I'm doing teaching now and seminars and presentations and all of that, I'm seeing more of the kingdom of heaven now than I've ever seen in my entire life. It happens more frequently. And it seems like the bubbles of the kingdom of heaven last longer.
Wow.
And those two are so dramatic. There's part of me that says, ooh, pay attention. The Father is at work. So.
Yeah. It definitely will take the reader, or it should take the reader to a place where they will start looking and watching and being more observant now from what you are giving us to, like you said, observe, the kingdom of heaven here on earth. And let's see, this is deep. It's a very deep book, Stephen. It's very deep. Let's see. And let's see, did you? Yeah, you did answer the first question about the length of time the experiences last. So now Brandy's asking me a question. She asked me, do I feel that by reading the book, we would have a better knowledge of how we can have such experiences? Well, again, I will state, Brandy, I didn't read the entire book, but from what I read, I will definitely say really what I just said a few seconds ago, that it will make you more aware of what you are dealing with here on earth, or the various experiences. Just like he said, the kingdom of heaven, you can find it in different avenues, various ways. And reading this book will alert you to, oh, that could be the kingdom of heaven. You know what I'm saying? It will make you more aware in terms of looking at the things here on earth in a totally different light. That's what it would do. It definitely does that for me. And I'm sure in reading, continuing on and finishing the book, it will probably continue to do that for me. It just reading what little I have has enlightened me already and made me, it has definitely made me think, and it piqued my curiosity and intrigued me for sure. So hopefully that answered your question, Brandy. And let's see, I want to make sure I don't have anything else on here. Okay. So, I don't know if you wanted to add to that or not, Steve. I did want to go ahead and just ask you a couple of other questions. Did you want to add to that?
Well, Brandy's asking really, really the good questions and the right questions, because my material causes you to look to the Father, and there's a sense of quickening, and that means that you're more ready to see, you're more ready to experience. So think of it as the Father's rolling out the red carpet for us to have the kind of relationship with Him that He originally intended, and that's kind of why the stuff going on in my life right now seems to be developing and enveloping, and it's altogether a really, really good thing. It's very good for me. It's very good for people that are in my space.
Well, great.
I love this dialogue and interaction. Ask another question. This is good.
I'm loving it too. I'm loving it too. This is good. Well, let me ask you this, and it may be a redundant question or the answer, you kind of went into it a little bit. But how did you discover your purpose?
Well,
I think I know, but my listeners.
It's taken me a long life. I'm currently now 62 years old.
You look great,
my
Stephen.
life's taken. What?
You look great.
Yeah, well preserved. Carefully unretouched photographs. I know that my purpose in life now is to help people understand and experience the kingdom of heaven in the here and now, and that we can and we should. And the real issue is how. We've just forgotten. In the melee, in the last 2,000 years since Christ walked the face of the earth, we've forgotten the kind of relationship that the Father engenders, and that we should captivate that we should have that and appropriate it for ourselves. And so, my purpose in life is to teach and train. That's really what I'm going to do for as many years as the Father gives me. I'm still a financial advisor. I run a business where I'm an entrepreneur, but we run a kingdom business, and that means that we operate under kingdom values as an organization. And so our job in the work that we do is we're kingdom first and a business commercial second. That's just pretty simple.
Okay.
And so as I spend time with people, I'm always thinking deep. You talked about, gosh, your book is deep. Well, the reason the book's deep is because I am, and because the Father is. There's a section in Scripture that says, deep calls unto deep. And that's just true. And that's where life resides. That's where life is, real life. And so all of my relationships now are deep calling unto deep. And for example, last week I walked into my office, and you wouldn't expect that a bubble of the kingdom of heaven would show up in an office kind of environment. But the person that runs our front was having a telephone conversation. She runs the switchboard for us, but she's talking on her cell phone. And you could tell that she was under it. She was in a really, really bad way. She was struggling incredibly to keep it together. And I walked by her and I couldn't stop. I put everything down, took off my coat, set my briefcase down, and I went behind her desk and I said, you just had a really, really bad thing happen. And she put her phone on mute and turned and she said, yeah, my father just fell and he's in intensive care and they're getting ready to do open head brain surgery on him. And they told us to call the family and get over there right away. And the only thing I could do, because I can't fix that, was say, I gave her a hug, which is totally inappropriate, especially in today's culture. But she needed it.
Right.
And I said, this is a hug from your dad, and this is a hug from your Holy Father, God, and that you need to leave. You need to get out of here. We will find somebody else to run the front today. You need to go be with your dad. Go check into the hospital and be with the rest of your family. You don't need to be here. Well, she felt the bubble of the kingdom of heaven in that moment. And so did I.
Wow.
And we pulled another member of our staff up to run the front. And we literally had to package her up, put her coat on, and shove her out the door. It's like, it's important for you to be a daughter now. It's more important for you to be a daughter than for you to be a staff person and a member of our work team. At the end of the day, it's the people that are more important than the work.
Definitely.
Well, how do you recreate that? Well, you don't. You just anticipate it. You say, Lord, I'm available. And I was the vehicle through which she needed to be able to connect, A, with her dad, and B, with the bigger dad, and be served and ministered to in a way that was very, very important at the moment. And see, when we're inside the bubbles of the kingdom of heaven, our life changes. That and to that I just say, glory be to God on the highest. Amen to that.
Amen.
I'm all over that. And I'm thinking that other people could have that very same experience that I did. And so I teach and train people on how to do that, how to be available for the Father in a commercial venture, emotionally, in the way that you operate with other people. There are practical ways that you can experience the bubble of heaven. There are clearly spiritual ways to do that. And so, the book is part of the teaching, and we're going to have some really good fun with what's happened with the book.
Definitely.
So those are examples of how simple it is to experience the kingdom of heaven.
Okay. And I like that. And that was, like you said, simple ways to discover, because it's happening all around us. We just need to be aware and tune in, to things.
Yeah.
You tuned in when you walked in that door and realized that she needed that.
Yep. That's right.
And so that's really something. And I'm glad to say that it's simple enough, because sometimes people think it's so difficult, or it's something that you can't attain, but it's right there. It's within your reach. It's within your grasp. And Christ wants us to know this. And then I think that would help us, in our daily living, to even make right decisions and help other people. So that was I like that example that you gave to us. Let me ask you this other question before we take our next break. And that was actually that was a lot, discovering your purpose. Let's see here. Another question here is, why do you think most people struggling in knowing their own purpose? Why do you think that most people struggle? I mean, you kind of, well, to me, you kind of answered it a little bit, but why do you think most people struggle?
Living in the here and now is not easy. The here and now is very strongly dominated by what I'm going to say is the God of this world, which is categorically in opposition to the kingdom of heaven. And so we live here. We operate, we experience the here and now. It's more powerful, frankly, than the hereafter, at least initially. And so it's not unusual that the powers of here and now keep us distracted and inundated, and we're in a place where we're climbing ladders that are leaning on the wrong kinds of walls. And so, the determining purpose or personal for our lives starts at the very core, which is for us values, what's important to us, integrity, in that what's going on inside, does that actually play all the way out into our fingertips? And character. Character is what's going on inside. What kind of development am I doing inside? So for me, I'm a college professor as well. And one of the things I teach my students is, if all of your academic pursuits is simply a head game, then we've lost the battle. Because it has to be a heart game. Part of what you're doing here at the University of Denver is we're training you to become different people. And that's a heart thing. Well, I'm really tapping into the purpose for life is not in your head. The purpose for life is going to come from your heart. And so spend the time to be able to understand the heart issues of your life. Then you can add the intellect. Then you can add your master's degrees and all of those other kinds of experiences But if you try to add that without really working on the core, it's really hard to get to a fulfilling, purpose-driven life.
Mm.
And my experience is that bubbles of the kingdom of heaven will accelerate that process, where you're in a place where you get better faster. You begin to understand, physician, understand yourself. That's a really powerful thing.
Okay. That's deep. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Now, I know earlier you had mentioned something about the 6 facets. So I want to talk about that after we come back from the break. And because that was one of the questions I had written down. So we'll ask you that when we come back. And you that are tuned in to our Facebook Live, if you're just now joining us, I do have a wonderful guest. You should see his face up in the upper right-hand corner. Stephen Music. He is the author of Life After Heaven. I saw that, Steve. Life After Heaven. Stephen Music. You can look him up. He is our guest today on Mind, Body, and Soul, and we are having an awesome discussion here. And I want you all to make sure you come back. We're going to take a quick break, come back, and have more dialogue with Mr. Music. You are listening to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette right here on Intellectual Radio.
Miracles happen. Great things happen when shepherds worship, and victory happens when our hands are raised. When our hands are raised, we are the men of God, and worship is what we do. We love to praise. We must go to that place before we can leave you. So let us worship Him in spirit, worship Him in truth, for all that He's already done and everything He will do, because great things happen when shepherds worship. And miracles happen when shepherds praise. Everybody needs to know great things happen when shepherds worship. Victory happens when our hands are raised.
Nehemiah 8:6 says that Ezra praised the Lord, the great God, and all the people shouted, Amen, as they lifted their hands. Then they bowed down with their faces to the ground and they worshiped the Lord. I want everybody under the sound of my voice right now to help us say, we give you praise, all of our days. It is to you that our hands are raised. Hallelujah. We give you praise, God. We give you glory for who you are. Come on, help us say it tonight. We give you praise, all of our days. It is to you that our hands are raised. We lift our hands in worship. We lift our hands in praise, and we give you glory. We give you praise. All of our days. It is to you. Our hands are raised. When we think of all you've done, when we think of your goodness, we lift our hands in praise. We lift our hands and we worship you. We lift our hands in praise. We praise you, Lord, for all that you do. We lift our hands in praise. There's nobody like you, Jesus. You're worthy of all the glory. We worship you. We worship you, our King. We will sing. Yes, we will.
All right, welcome back to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette right here on Intellectual Radio. This is your host, Annette Harris, and I'm so glad you have decided to join us on today, listening and or watching us. And I am looking here. We're talking with Stephen Music, the author of Life After Heaven, and we've had a few questions on the board that he has responded to. We want to ask him some more. But, before we do that, Stephen, can you do me a really big favor and let everyone know where they can purchase your book? Where can they find Stephen's book, Life After Heaven?
The easiest way, the best way is Amazon. I mean, it's
Okay.
You can also buy it at Waterbrook, which is my publisher. You can also order one through our website, which is stephenmusic.com. But frankly, we just link you directly to Amazon. They've got all the plumbing for that. So
Okay, great. And maybe I can ask Jackie if she can, when she gets a moment, just put the link in the live feed for me so that my listeners can, click on the link. That'll be, easy access. That's how we do it nowadays. Maybe put a link
Yep.
there.
yeah,
that
we
way.
can do that.
Okay, wonderful. I appreciate that. Thank you in advance, Jackie. And let's see here. I know we talked before the break that I wanted to ask you about the 6 facets.
Yeah.
And what are you talking about? Experiencing heaven in 6 facets. What are the 6 facets? What in the world do you mean by that?
What I did and the way I sort of discovered that was after 2011, and I was encouraged to write my story. I sat in my den, what I call my womb room here in Colorado, and I made a list of what I thought were the most memorable events, most memorable stories, and I discovered that all of my experiences with the kingdom of heaven in the here and now could be categorized into 6 places. And so when I'm doing teaching here, I talk about the kingdom of heaven can be experienced in 6 facets. And facets is a good key word because think of it like a diamond ring that has multiple facets and shines. That's the idea. So the first one is spiritual. The second one is practical. That's the one that my friends at Denver Seminary have the biggest trouble with. Like, really? Heaven? Practically? Come on. But it's true. And then vocationally, experiencing the kingdom of heaven at work. And then emotionally, experiencing the kingdom of heaven in our emotions. I work with a bunch of clinical psychologists, and some of them are taking my work into their fields of practice because people get healthier by experiencing the kingdom of heaven than they do in purely clinical environments. It's one of those things, the Father can do more with less. And so I teach and train people on how to experience the kingdom of heaven emotionally, getting healthy emotionally. And then experiencing the kingdom of heaven, the 5th facet is what we call insight. It's experiencing the kingdom of heaven in dreams and visions and visually. And then finally, time. And understanding that the kingdom of heaven operates on a totally different time construct. My youngest son, who kind of hangs out and we go and do events together, he said, Dad, every time you're teaching about this, it feels like time slows down. He said, maybe that's just perception on my part, but he said, there's just something about this that's extraordinarily peaceful and settling. And it's like we operate on a totally different pace. And I'm thinking, well, that's the time construct to this. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we all operated on the kingdom pace of life instead of sometimes the frenetic that we live by? Just a thought.
Yeah,
That's all 6.
Wonderful. Thank you. I was trying to write them down as you were giving them out. Spiritual, practical, vocationally, in our work, emotionally, and then the insight, which would encompass the dreams, visually, and time. Okay.
And then time. Yeah, that's all 6.
Yeah, great. That sounds wonderful. Okay, let's see. I have other questions for you. Now, let me ask you. I want to interject this in between my questions. I want to ask, because another thing that grabbed me when I was reading your book, because I think even when we were talking, when I first talked to you on the phone, and I said, well, how long ago did this happen to you? And when you told me, I was like, well, wait a minute, why did it take you so long, to write it, to publish it, to get it out? And then you mentioned, I think you verbally told me, but I also read that it took you, maybe like 10 years to even tell your wife what you had experienced? Is that accurate?
that was true.
Okay. And so you kept this to yourself for so long, for 10 years. And then I was still wondering why. And I did find an answer in your book. And I said, wow, that makes so much sense. So if we go back to the beginning of this session, and when you mentioned about your experience in heaven, and when you said Jesus put his hand over you on your shoulder and told you can't stay. And you said that was probably one of the worst things that you had ever heard.
Oh, yeah.
And so then when you went into kind of the detail of why you waited so long, or why it's difficult for you to talk about your experience, can you share with my listeners what your reasoning was with that? Because that grabbed me.
Yeah. When I had the privilege of going to heaven and spending the time, I had a sense that I was staying. I had a sense that I knew that was Christ. I knew this is heaven. And I'm thinking, this is good. I'm liking it. I'm enjoying this. I totally get it now.
I made it.
Yeah. It's like, hey, this is good. I'm liking it. So to go from that to being back in the here and now, which is the land of bland, and coming back to a broken body. I mean, I was profoundly disabled for 10 years. I had just a gigantic vacancy in me about why in the world am I here? How come I wasn't able to stay? And so until I could actually get some answers to that, I wasn't going to talk about what happened to me, because people would ask me questions that I didn't have answers to. I mean, I didn't have answers for me. And so I spent the first 10 years fully understanding that I'm in the here and now, and I'm trying to recover my health, and I'm trying to make sense out of life in the here and now after having experienced the hereafter. And, one of the profound senses is that you don't really want to be here. It is so glorious to be in heaven that you don't want to be here. You don't want to be active and present inside your own life. And so how do you have a conversation with your beloved that says, you married me anyway. Look at what you got. I'm the best that I can be, but I love you with all my heart. But nonetheless, I have this strong desire not to be here. Mm. Well, how do you put words to that without destroying her? I mean, I just thought, I don't even want to go there. I don't want to have that conversation. Well, over time, it became apparent that I needed to bring her into the conversation and have conversation with her about, here's why I'm a little bit weird. Okay, here's why I'm a lot weird. And she began to connect the dots and go, well, that makes total sense now. I dedicated the book to her, and I described her as a lioness of a woman, and I think she's an angel with skin. I would not be here were it not for her. So, like a lot of marriages, we became and we're becoming one. And so it took a long time. I didn't really want to talk about it. And for a long, long time, we just lived it. We didn't want to make a big deal about it. And part of that is because I'm an introvert. Yeah. I mean, I get my energy out of solitude. So for me to do this kind of stuff, and for me to write a book, and for me to, do public speaking and do, teaching and that kind of thing, it takes everything in me to do that, because it's not my norm. It's not my natural. But it's what the Father has placed in front of me that says, go do this. Go do this. It's important. And so, in 2011, we began to share the story widely. And it's been a wonderful experience. It's been great. We've enjoyed it.
That's beautiful.
And it's been very rewarding. It's, as we said earlier, it's part of my purpose.
Right. And, I can see why you call her an angel with skin, a lioness, someone who obviously she loves you. She loves you.
Oh.
Without even meeting her and knowing, she has to love you, for all that you experience. And then, like you say, when you finally talk to her, you're like, okay, this is the reason why I've been weird and really weird, So I can only imagine what she was dealing with before you actually told her. Okay, why is he acting like this, or why is he saying this or not saying this? And it takes a lot to be with an introvert. It really does. It really does, because it's like you're talking to yourself at that point when you're trying to talk to your spouse.
Our romance started in college, and she fell in love with the 195-pound chiseled guy who ultimately qualified to go to SEALs in the military. I mean, that was me. And that was the guy that she fell in love with. And I got off of the plane on convalescent leave at 129 pounds. I mean, I looked like a prisoner of war coming back from the battlefield. And my first thought was, she's going to take one look at me and go, no way. It's like, that's more than I need. I'm not up for that. But she did just the opposite. She moved toward me. Beautiful. And the rest, as they say, is history. She embraced me in a way that I totally did not deserve and didn't understand at the time. And that's what love does.
Yeah. So. That's a real love story. Oh, I'm getting. Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. I would love to meet her, Steve. I would definitely love to meet her for sure, because she can actually. She's a witness to what you've been through, and she has been there for you. So that's beautiful. That's wonderful to hear. And I know we're kind of talking about something else now when we talk about marriages and family, but it's wonderful to hear that, and to know that you do have someone there. To be
that goes into the emotional facet.
Yes, definitely. Yep. Okay, so you're both living it out. It's not just you.
We are doing that.
That's great. And now, how do your children feel about, or your family, not just your children, your other loved ones? Because I think one of the questions that Brandy had is, how do people relate to you, or when you go through those experiences, here on earth, how do they look at you differently? How does your family feel about everything that has transpired, and then even with the book and, what you're trying to accomplish here? How do they feel about this?
One of our parenting dynamics for us was that we have three sons, And we raised each of our three sons to be able to pursue that part of them that was the strongest and deepest for them. So we wanted them to find their own way and be courageous and take risks and invest in yourself. And so in 2011, when it became apparent that we were going to go public with all of this, we did a family meeting, and you can always tell that your kids learned a lot growing up when they start speaking back to you language that you taught them. And in a unity way, my sons and my daughters-in-law basically said, "Hey, Dad, you've been telling us to do that all of our lives. It's now your turn. So go for it." I mean, it's a pretty strong calling, and we want to support you to do for yourself what you've encouraged us to do. And for my beloved, she said, there's a certain element in our lives that's just obedience. As the Father leads us in certain ways, we have a choice to make. We could say yes or no. We could volunteer. And she said, I think it's a volunteer, and I think that has to be a yes. We are in. And, in a gambling kind of a thing, we are all in. Because we are all in for Christ. I'm all in for what is the Father doing in the here and now. And, in my heart of hearts, I'm hopeful that our culture will change as a result of our work.
Beautiful. And that's what you would expect. That's what you look for, rather. In what you're doing. You don't want your work and all that you're doing to be in vain. You wanted to reach someone. And, like I even say, even with this radio show, when I first started, I hesitated a lot. I kept asking the Lord if this is what he wanted me to do. And then when I finally settled into it, believing that this is what he wanted me to do, I said, if I can just reach one person, then I've done my job. But the Lord is blessed. It's been 4 years now, and so we're still reaching people. And we just go in his calling and what he has for us to do. He'll make up for the lack that we have. If he tells us, to do something. I was telling someone the other day, if the Lord brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. So, you just, you deal accordingly and allow God to have his way. As you were talking, there was another question that popped up in my mind, and right now I can't think of it, but that's what happens when you get younger, Steve. That's what happens when you get younger. But let me ask this. When I first mentioned the name of your book, I talked about how people typically will say life after death as opposed to life after heaven. When you probably maybe first presented this idea, or the title of the book itself, maybe to your publishers or whoever was working with you, what were some of their reactions? Did they not understand what you were trying to do at first? And when you gave the title alone, what was their reaction?
The original title to the book was A Death Worth Living For. And any time that you're doing a literary work, it's a collaborative process. And so there were 6 or 7 people involved in what should this book be titled. And we collectively landed on Life After Heaven. And that generates questions and exclamation points both on the part of anybody that reads it or sees it. And so, and there's the marketing department is involved in that and saying, we actually want to put a book out that makes people pick it up off of the shelf or download it from Amazon and go, what's up with this? And then generate conversation. and talk about it. And so, it's sort of an evolutionary process.
Okay. And it does just that. I've already said that earlier in today's session about how the title alone grabs you, and then of course, as I read just like even the beginnings of the book, it makes me want to read more and to understand more of what you are trying to give to us. And do you really believe that this was your sole purpose for, or the reason why you were sent back to Earth, why he didn't allow you to stay, is what you're doing with this book and your different speaking engagements? Do you believe this was your sole purpose of being sent back here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And I'm in a place where I serve at the pleasure of, and anytime the Lord thinks I'm done or believes I'm done, I'll go home. And I don't have any idea about what my timetable is. And actually, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. I think mostly about what's going on in the here and now. And I'm available for whatever the Father decides to do today, in this moment, with the people that I'm here with. And it's kind of fun to live your life in that way where you can be fully present and you don't think much about the past and you don't think about the future, because right now is the only moment that we have. Okay, I'll take it.
Now let me ask you, in saying that, because that's wonderful to hear. Were you always like that, or was it just since the experience that you had?
No, it clearly has been changed. My life has been changed by my experiences, and it's been an evolutionary process over life. Part of the reason that I do what I do now is to be able to be a catalyst and an accelerator in the lives of other people, because there's a whole bunch of junk that we go through now that you don't have to. And so I'm trying to help people get better quicker, help people develop at a more rapid pace, alleviate some of the pain that goes on in the marketplace today.
Okay.
So.
Very wonderful. Yeah, I think that this is still good. I'm still enjoying it. I think I want to go ahead and take a quick break here and then come back. I want to see if my producer can get, I believe Elder McGee did send a poem. Just to give you just real quick, Elder Kevin McGee, many of you know that on social media, Facebook, unfortunately lost his nephew over the weekend, Saturday. Elder McGee has a show here on Saturdays, and it is entitled Connections. It comes on at 12 noon Central Standard Time on Saturdays. And what he does, he provides mind, body, and soul with spoken word or poems, however you want to say it, that's in relation to the topic that we are discussing on that particular session. So I am going to see if we can take a break and then see if my producer can get that ready. We can play that. And I mentioned about him losing his nephew because I didn't ask him for a poem this time, because I knew he was dealing with, the death of his nephew. So please, I pray for that family. But he supplied me with it, so I'm grateful. It sounds like my producer has a cue, so we're going to take a listen to this right here. Take a quick break.
Seeing, but not understanding. Understanding, but not seeing. Events take place, moving rapidly as if I'm in a race. Blurred images pass in front of me, moving faster than my eyes can see. Mental faculties slow to decode. What is transpiring? Does anyone know? Glimpse of my existence, distant memories. I reach out, but the images, they flee. Darkness coming all around me. Darkness as far as I can see. But then the darkness is dispelled by light, light, light like I've never seen before. And then a warmth envelops me like the comforting arms of a parent of a frightening child, giving the assurance that everything is well. Looking around, seeing familiar faces who have arrived before me. Joy is in this place and an awakening to a new realm of existence. Now I realize that where I came from was the land of the dying. But now where I am is truly the land of the living. As my eyes take in the unspeakable marvels, I see he who sits on the throne, light emanating in every direction, and I am drawn to him like a moth to a flame. A love like I've never known fills my heart as I reach the throne. I can't help but bow in reverence as his joy washes over me. Laughter fills my soul as I hear him speak two words that no matter where you shall spend your eternity, these two words shall always greet you. Welcome home.
No more wasting time. I'll bless you. I give you my heart, my mind. Lord, please take control. I declare I'm a willing soul. I declare I'm a willing soul. No more wasting time. I'll bless you. Bless name. Give you my heart, my mind. Lord, please. I declare I'm a willing soul. I declare I'm willing soul. Keep my thoughts from leaving my body as a sacrifice. Holy and acceptable, I live for you. Let the things in life. So whatever you want, Lord, I'm gonna do it. I'm willing to do it. Lord, I'm willing. Not my will, but yours be done, oh Lord. Go wherever you want me to go. All myself in your word. Show me the way. Just lead me. However you want me to live. Here am I. Send me. Use me, Lord. I'm ready to be for the kingdom. Win a song for you. Use me, Lord. Use me, Lord. Oh.
All right, all right. Welcome back. Welcome back to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. And I am your host, Annette Harris. Thank you so much for returning, for listening, and for tuning in on today. Thank you for your participation and all your questions that have come forth. We do appreciate them. And I can't wait for you all to get this book. You're asking us questions, but I can't wait for you to go to Amazon and look for Life After Heaven. Look up Stephen Musick, Musick. Music with a K on the end, Stephen. And you will find this wonderful book, and it will definitely help you in your life while you are still here on earth. Life after heaven. Life after heaven. So I'll make my announcements after the once we end this session, the ones that I want to update you on for Mind, Body, and Soul and or correct, so we can get back into talking with Stephen. I have a couple of more questions that I want to ask him on this afternoon. So I already asked you about why do you think you were sent back to earth after your experience in heaven. And then I think I also asked you about individuals and how they look at you now with this experience and what you deal with. Let's see. When you were in heaven, I mean, and you let me know how much you can talk about when you were in heaven. I kind of want to back up there. And you had these experiences, and I know we really didn't go into depth of detail, but what can you tell us a little bit more about your experience while you were up there? Was that the only conversation that you had with Jesus when he put his hand on your shoulder telling you can't stay? I don't know what more you can tell us about that experience that you're comfortable with at this time.
Well, my experience in heaven was you go through a tunnel of light. You're weightless in the transport. Hollywood does a really good job of that. You know, it's kind of like being at warp speed, or the hyperdrive on Star Wars. That's actually pretty well. It feels like that. But when you get to heaven, you're pushed out, and you're in a real place. It has gravity. You have a body. You look around. All of my experience was outdoors. I was in an agrarian kind of environment. And I get welcomed to heaven by the Son of the Father. And he grabs you and says, welcome. And he says welcome in a way that it's kind of like, we've been waiting for you. And being inside heaven is like being inside pure joy. You know, emotionally, we live in ecstasy here and sadness. You know, there's a tidal flow that goes along with how we are doing in the here and now. In heaven, there's no such animal. It's pure joy. It comes after you. And it's part of why living here is so hard and why the memory of living there was so wonderful. Because everything is positive. Everything is joy. And it's omnipresent. It's everywhere. It's very visually vibrant in heaven. We live in 1950s television, grainy, black and white.
Wow.
In heaven, it's like HD on steroids. Everything is just vibrant. The music in heaven is to die for. You just, it isn't present. It's like in the background. It's the fabric of the place. And you just want to stay there like forever. My experience in heaven felt like an afternoon. And I had an entire afternoon walking in the wheat fields with the Son of God. And what he did was he unraveled, we did a life review. He unraveled all the stuff that happened to me as a little kid And he made it okay. You know, the violence in my history, the vacancy that I had. I mean, it was kind of like he made it okay. And I really understood that even all those times growing up where I felt like I was alone, I never was. He was with me the whole time. And there's now purpose in all of that. There's a reason for that. You know, my older brother was non-diagnosed bipolar. And so, you know, as an adult, later on in life, when his diagnosis became apparent, it's like, oh, well, that makes total sense. Makes total sense now. And so my experience in heaven was the conversation with Christ was just exactly like the conversation we're having.
Mm. Wow.
He's a rather wonderfully imposing figure. Yeah, you know, the book, it's frankly, it's not a novel, it's a book. It's 180 pages. We spent 10% of the book describing what heaven was like. And my writer, who really, Paul Pastor, was an incredible colleague in getting that done. When we were going through that, he said, you know, he said the whole time that we were talking about heaven, it wasn't like you were remembering it. It was like you were reliving it. And that's a good comment because I live with that every day. That's the context in which I live, even in the here and now. And I would go back tomorrow in a heartbeat. But
Wow.
that's not my call.
Right. Oh my, this is deep. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking. I was trying to fight back my tears, to be honest with you, because you mentioned about how Christ told you, you know, about the things that you dealt with in your childhood, and you know all that you went through, and then he told you were not alone. He was there. He was there for you.
Yeah.
That's touching, and you know, it's like you were actually there while we've read about stuff like this, you know, and but you actually experienced it, and it's really something. I don't know. You kind of took me somewhere there when you were talking there, Steve.
That's good.
You took
well,
me
you know,
there. You did.
And my life's work is to give people a taste of what it's like in the here and now, because I think we're supposed to have that, and I just think we've forgotten. And you know, part of my work is to help people remember. You know, remember, like put us back together.
Yeah.
Because we're so torn apart on this side. And my experience so far has been experiencing bubbles of the kingdom of heaven. Changes life forever.
Indeed, this book definitely will do that. And God is working through you to do that. I firmly believe that. Now, do you, and you kind of mentioned this, do you think about it every day though? That experience?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Every day.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah.
It never leaves.
Wow.
You know, one of the other things Paul Pastor said was, he said, you know, your description, and this was 40 years ago, he said, your description was, you were reliving it. And he said, you know, I don't have to be a very good writer here. He said, I just have to transcribe what you just said. And that's because time does not diminish the power of the experience. And I'm learning that time does not diminish the power of the experience that people that I'm relating to and building relationships with have today. Some of the experiences that people have changes their lives forever. And that's good, because Jesus is the one who changes lives.
Yeah.
We just make the introductions. And that's kind of why I'm here.
Definitely. Yes, I would agree. I would definitely agree. You know, when you I know I had already asked about how people kind of, even your family, how they react to you, or and that was, and I wanted to say that was beautiful, that the support that you received from your family. That was absolutely wonderful when you decided that you wanted to make or write a book. That was great to have that support, because it could have been opposite. It really could have been opposite. And we're like, no, why don't make us look like we're crazies, or or anything like that.
No. They already know I'm crazy. They already know I'm half a bubble, half a plum. Say, way to go, Dad. This will fit right in.
I can understand. Wow, that's interesting. But now, do you get individuals who, know about, the book, and then maybe those that knew you, the Stephen, or no Stephen, do they come up to you and just like ask you kind of like, all kind of questions, about what you experienced? Was Jesus like this? And was it like this? And da 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 da.
Yeah.
Is it really like this, like it says in the Bible? Okay. So you do get that.
All the time.
I'm sure. I'm so sure. Wow. Yeah, because that would be some things I would probably do, is ask you. I would probably ask different things, that I've seen in the Word, and inquiring about that. You mentioned something about, how colorful it is, and up there. And we're all like here on Earth, we're like black and white, or bland, as you say.
Yep.
I recall, actually, I think I've heard this a few times, and those who have, kind of died and came back, and they talk about all the color, and like you said, mentioned about the joy, that they experience. And so it's like, when you hear that from more than, one who maybe experienced something like that, maybe not as dramatic as you, maybe they kind of went out of here and then came back. But it's like, wow, that it's true. You all are saying the same things, and that corroborates, and allows you to understand what you all are really saying about what you've experienced. That it is true. It's not something that's just made up. So I appreciate that. Now, let me ask you personally, Steve, what do you think about yourself now? Because sometimes, people, when they experience some things, they may, in their mind, put themselves above other people, more or less, or, think that, hey, I'm all this now. I experienced, you experienced like the ultimate, and you really did. How do you view yourself now, and how do you even handle that? Because that is something that I'm sure you will probably have to deal with, or, not thinking that I'm above everybody else. Have those thoughts come to you? Have you thought that way? Is that something that, now I don't even have to deal with that. I know who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. What are Stephen's thoughts about Stephen now after the experience?
Well, there's really no room in my soul and in my character for being exalted, and I work really hard to pattern my life after the person that's described in the Bible as Jesus, and he served. And the picture that you get, that he's sitting down with a towel wrapped around him and he's washing the disciples' feet. I get that, and that's what that's really what drives me. I want to serve in the way he did. I want to relate to people in the way that he did. I want to love as deeply and intensely as he did. And so, if I'm really wanting to do all of that, there's no room for arrogance. There's no room for struggling for position. That's just not part of. It's just not part of it. And I'm very, very comfortable being in a place where my job is to serve others. And it's the way that we've designed and built, frankly, life for my beloved and I.
Beautiful. I love when you call her beloved. That's just so sweet. It's so endearing.
Well, I love her so much it hurts.
Oh,
It's painful.
Wow.
In a good way.
In a good way.
And that's a paradox. It's like, how does that work? But there isn't a day that goes by that I don't. I'm still amazed that she chose me. And that's a God thing. I mean, the Father worked in her for me to be who I am. She's a gift.
Beautiful.
Pure and simple, a gift.
Beautiful. And I can tell she is, because your eye, you kind of go somewhere when you start talking about her.
Oh yeah. You got that right. That is discernment on your part.
I saw the love in your eyes, Steve. I really did.
Oh.
That's beautiful,
that's
though.
Good.
That's
That
what we
good.
need to see. We need to see that. We definitely need to see
Yep.
that. And
Yep.
that's wonderful. Now, just a couple more questions, and then we're going to get out of here. What do you really want people to get from reading Life After Heaven? What's one of the most important things you want them to get from this?
I really want them to get two things out of the book. One is I want them to have their own, I want them to open up the possibility that they could have their own experience of the kingdom of heaven as they read the book. And two, I want them really to embrace the idea that the kingdom of heaven is closer than we think. And everybody can experience it repeatedly and should. That becomes true for them. That becomes a tangible reality of, oh my gosh. I find it fascinating that my book is in every airport in America. And it's an airline read. I mean, I've had people that get my book in Los Angeles on a cross-country flight, and they literally get off the plane in New York or Washington, D.C., and they're sending me emails and texts and saying, dude, you wrecked me. I'm a totally different guy now than I was 3 hours ago when I started your book. Is there something else? Is there more to this story? I want more. And for me, that's the kingdom at work. And I'm going, absolutely. There are all kinds of other resources, and go to our website and enjoy the tour. And there is always more. There is more.
Great.
So, and I'm honored and gratified that it's catching on, and that the idea actually has traction. So I'm excited about that.
Yes, there's a lot of traction. It does. And it's going places. So you guys have got to get this book. I see a comment on here. They're saying, I've got to get this book. I would agree with you. You've got to get this book. So please make sure you all that are on Facebook Live, go to, I believe Jackie did provide the link. You can go to Amazon, look for Life After Heaven. The author name again is Stephen Musick, music with a K, Musick. And you will not be disappointed. I, Annette, known as Annette, am approving this book.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're honored by that.
Stephen, thank you again for your time. We do appreciate you on today and taking time out, answering questions, and taking us through your journey. It has definitely been a blessing to myself and then also my listeners.
I'm happy about that, and we are honored to do it.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, you take care. Thanks again, Jackie.
Okay.
Appreciate you, girl. All right.
Thank you, dear.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care. All right. That has been a very hot session. And Stephen Musick, Life After Heaven. Wonderful book. Please make sure you check that out. Again, you will not be disappointed. Real quick, we are winding up. Want to make sure you all come back. Mind, Body, and Soul will do a double header on this Friday, which will be February the 2nd, 2018. We will be here on Intellectual Radio. I will also do a Facebook Live. We are going to feature Dr. Lord Michael Hunt. Please note, my promos say a different time. It says 12 noon. The time has just changed on today. It will be 1:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. 1:00 p.m. Central Standard Time this Friday. Please meet me here. 1 o'clock, 1 to 3 with Dr. Lord Michael Hunt of the So-Called Global Nation. And we've had him on before. You do not want to miss this session. Please make sure that you join us on Friday. And then next week, I am going to have as a guest co-host, beginning next week for the first 3 sessions in February, Chris Davenport of Vibes. Please check him out, VIBE capital Z, Vibes. He's going to come on, be my guest co-host, because we're going to talk about this issue that we have here in the African-American community and kind of talking about networking. What I want you to do, please, if you are listening to me right now, my assistant has just created a new page, a network with mind, body, and soul. It is a page that we are going to network. So I want you to go on, find this, a network, ANET, work with mind, body, and soul. Please make sure you go there. I'm going to ask her to put the link in the Facebook Live feed. We're going to be filling this network up because we want to network with one another. African Americans, we need to support one another. African American History Month is coming up. We want to acknowledge, we want to get the word out. And now you here on Facebook Live, stay tuned. I'm not going to shut this down. I'm going to do something else once I go off the air here at Intellectual Radio. So don't go anywhere. And I do want to give a shout out also real quick to Mia Ogburn. She had me to host her play on this past weekend. And the entitled play is Behind Closed Doors Exposed. Look up Mia Ogburn, MIAOGBURN.com. And also go to V as in Victor, the number 2, V Enterprise. That is a voice to the voiceless. This is a wonderful millennial who is preparing you through the work of arts, through plays. And she is bringing to light situations that we're dealing with in our families, socially, economically, everything. You must see it. It was an awesome play. Shout out to her and her crew. They did an awesome job this past weekend, and I enjoyed hosting. So we have a lot going on. Go to GetCaughtInTheNetRadio.com. If you missed anything of what I just said, go to GetCaughtInTheNetRadio.com. You will find everything that I just talked about. And my sponsors on today, virtual executive assistant, Demetria Brand Triplett, please look her up. She will help and assist you if you don't have time to do it yourself. And then also Gary Triplett Jr., FES. He will help you to get your credit together. So I'm going to ask my assistant to put that in the Facebook Live feed. Make sure you contact them because they can definitely help you out. So, hey, until next time, which will be Friday, February 2nd, I want you to get caught up with Annette.
You've just been listening to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, where your host, Annette Harris, provided you with psychological and biblical insight for your everyday concerns. Need more insight? Visit Annette's Facebook page at Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. Don't forget, tune in next week for Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette.